Okay. Welcome everybody. My name's Christine Cary and I'm joined today by Meirion Gravell, Managing Director of the Leadership Pipeline Institute for the UK and Ireland. And Meirion's going to talk to us about what the Leadership Pipeline Institute is for the next 20 minutes or so. So Meirion, welcome.
Thank you very much, Christine. I'm Meirion Gravell. I'm a recovering Chief People Officer. With your help, then I can get through those dark days and put them behind me. I'm delighted to be with you and Christine today to introduce some of our first principles with regard to leadership.
Excellent. So let's start with the obvious question then. Who is the Leadership Pipeline Institute and what do you do?
So the Leadership Pipeline Institute, we are a niche consultancy, and really we do two things. The first thing we do is map your organizational structures into the leadership pipeline model and specifically design or co-design the leadership work that needs to get done at every single unique level of leadership within your organization. Second thing we then do is to provide transition programs to make sure that those leaders make that mindset shift and transition fully into the leadership role that they need to deploy in order for that crucial leadership work to be done in essence.
That's fascinating. Thank you. So I picked up on something you said at the beginning. You talked about leadership first principles. Tell me more about that, please.
Sure. Well, look, I'll probably use shapes to introduce some of those first principles that drive everything we do. So let's start off with our glorious individual contributors that we all have within our businesses. And those individual contributors, they're circles. And then we tend to take the best individual contributors and promote them to become leaders of others. They are squares. We then promote those leaders of others into the leaders that lead them. They're often a dodgy triangle. And then, when we've had enough fun with that, we promote those leaders of leaders into functional leaders. They are often an odd gas-shaped deity that move amongst us in very mysterious and interesting ways. So we believe, and our research demonstrates, that each leadership role is different. That the leaders of others, Christine, what would you say the crucial elements of leading others would be? What would you want them to do as leaders?
Well, I guess I want them to develop their team. I guess they have to meet the objectives in line with the strategy. As well as developing the team, they need to manage the performance as well, have those tricky conversations.
Absolutely right. So they need to make sure that they select the right individual contributors. They need to make sure that they assess performance and develop accordingly, and getting into the development thereof. So there are crucial elements to the development of the individual contributors. So what's different about the leading leaders? What would you want leading leaders to do that is different to leading others?
Well, leading leaders, they work with their peers and colleagues a lot more. So I'd see them as kind of heads of small departments where they have to work cross-functionally a lot more with different stakeholders. And I mean, again, I know it's not different, but they're managing and leading their people who are leaders in essence as well.
Absolutely right. So these crucial elements that we need our leaders of others to do for individual contributors. Unsurprisingly, we want our leaders of leaders to do exactly the same, but crucially for leaders, as opposed to thinking or feeling that their own leadership teams are the individual contributors. On peers and working across, this is where silos begin to happen. And silos, like living hedges, living fences, continually grow. So a crucial part of what leaders of leaders do is to continually trim those hedges and make sure that those silos don't over-empower. And there's a crucial element too about strategy. Often this layer is the concrete layer. Strategy goes down and no further. Insights for strategy goes up and no further. So we believe a crucial element is to move this concrete layer from your concrete to your compass. The organizational compass comes from the ability to take strategy and translate that crucially into meaningful operational plans. So that's just an example of the difference we have found in our ongoing applied research and the foundational research that it's based upon about the difference between those two elements. So how do we make sure that pipeline happens? How do we make sure that all leaders are developed all of the time? Well, a lot of individual contributors will get to this point and fail to make the transition to leaders of others. So your leadership pipeline gets clogged. Similarly, leaders of others will get promoted to this level and clog up because they have failed to make the transition. So many of you out there would be asked the question, okay, how do I make those changes with regard to development, skills and competencies? And that's a crucial question that faces many of us in the industry.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've invested a lot and spent a lot of money on a skills and competency model for leadership. So how does this work within that? And isn't that enough, what I've already invested in?
Sure. So you often get the call, get me the best leadership competencies and skills bases you can. Get me the best leadership development programs money can buy. And off you go. And I'm sure you and many have done that. And the leaders come back from these skills courses and understanding these skills competency models. And their hands are full, absolutely brimming with skills. Hands are full of skills. Brilliant. Best course I've ever been on. So you give them a shout in 6 months' time and you say, how are those skills going? How are you deploying those wonderful skills? I haven't. Why not? You said they were the best skills you've ever seen. Can't get it to it. I haven't got the time. I cannot get my head around how to use time differently. Christine, get me the best time management course money can buy. Can you also throw in some patronizing comments about working smarter and not harder? Yes, of course. Off you go.
Sounds very familiar.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. I'm sure it does. And it's certainly many of the mistakes I made in my career. So off they go. Best time management course available. Back. How are you doing? Yes, got my head around it. 6 months later. How are you doing? Still can't get it. Why not? Hands are full of skills? Yes. You got your head around it? Yes. Why aren't you doing it? My heart's not in it. I do not value what I do as a leader. And until you change your mindset, and really value leadership as a distinct value-added enabler of operational execution. Only when your heart is in it and you've made those transitions will your head be in the right zone so you can then deploy those crucial skills. And essentially, our transition programs takes every leader through that transition. What is leadership? How do I value what I do? How do I then spend and invest my time? Every minute I spend investing in my team's development is a minute I spend on my own performance as a leader. And then the skills aren't easy, but they are easier than the other transitions. Once you then have that in place, then you deploy and refine the skills that you've learned on those wonderful leadership, sales skills, and behavioural competencies. And that's essentially how we bring those two things together.
That's really interesting, and yeah, it makes sense. So if I was to go for this, and bearing in mind I've spent money on time management programs and skills and competencies frameworks, how could you demonstrate impact? How am I going to see my return on investment?
Well, measuring impact and particularly data-driven development is in our DNA. So we invest heavily in our impact measurement. Of course, good old Kilpatrick is right. Of course, we spend a lot of time, we all do, on satisfaction. Was the content good? Was it entertaining? Was it engaging? So everyone we come across, most people say, yeah, we have some level of satisfaction measurement at level 1. We go further on every single course that we deploy. Every single program we've deployed over the last 15 to 17 years has an impact number behind it. And we go beyond satisfaction. So we measure knowledge, attitudes, and behavioural change at every single level. We love to work with organisations that go to the right level and link that to their business or organisational metrics. So we covet those partners as much as we can. What we find, because we measure knowledge, attitudes, and behaviours in 3 crucial areas. We have a baseline measure, so we know exactly where our delegates are at coming into each programme. And we can evolve and be agile in the way we deploy some of our programmes based on the cohort's baseline results. Immediately after the programme, we then look at what's been learnt. So how have we moved from baseline to what has been learnt? Crucially, what's stuck? So 3 to 6 months after the programme, we then undertake an applied test. On average, we see a starting point of around 40 to 42% being our baseline result. Immediately after our programmes, the learned score goes up to something around 87 to 89%. 3 months later, it drops, but to around 82%. So from a starting place of baseline to the true applied number, we see a 40 to 42% increase. And broadly speaking, if you've got a leader that is starting off deploying 42% of their time on leadership, then we consistently see an 82% number. That's a significant return on investment.
Yeah, that's really impressive. Thank you for sharing. And finally, one question that hasn't been answered yet is, we've talked about leadership of people that manage other people, but what if I've got leaders in my business, they don't manage people, they kind of manage a project or an area of expertise, etc. How can we capture them?
Sure, and often those specialists are forgotten. When you ask chief execs, what's most important for your execution priorities and performance? Is it leadership or those crucial specialists that really form and shape your industry? It's the specialists. So they are often the ones that are shortchanged. And they're often the ones that have a quick look at people and the need to lead people. And frankly, if you look around this place, you'll realize, do I really want to be leading people? No, thanks. I wouldn't touch it with a barge pole. So how can we take those crucial specialists and give them a real career, which is way beyond just a title's infrastructure? So we look at 4 domains. We see that specialists can significantly enhance an organization's performance by moving across 4 key domains. The first domain is the depth and breadth of knowledge. We often invest heavily in the depth of a specialist's knowledge, but really it's the breadth, how they can apply their knowledge across the organization in a different way. So we concentrate very much on lengthening the T, but also broadening the T with regard to knowledge. Domain number 1. Domain number 2, crucially, results orientation. It's no longer just about how much I know and how much I can deploy and develop others as a specialist. It's what others can do for me. How can I deliver through teams, through the organization, and how can results be outside of just what I do? Third domain is around the communication. Many of these specialists do not have, almost by definition, a team. So how can they communicate and influence without direct authority? Finally, innovation. To what extent can they develop their domain of expertise and ultimately shape it? So when you can progress along those 4 domains, a knowledge contributor can then progress to be a knowledge leader and ultimately be a knowledge principal, where they're changing the architecture and innovating through changing what their domain of expertise can do for the company and indeed the industry they're in. So that's the equivalent set of first principles for our specialists.
Fantastic. That's great. Everybody's covered, I think, in there. That's absolutely great to hear. Thank you very much. And I found that really interesting. And if people want to find out more, I believe you have some books available. Is that correct?
Indeed we do. So we can point you in the right direction with regard to lots of material at our website, or contact me with details below. And we'll be very happy to share not just our first principles, but crucially what our other clients have experienced. You guys will want to know what your peers have got out of working with us, and we're very happy to share their experiences.
Fantastic. Thank you, Meirion. That was really interesting, and I look forward to working with LPI in the future.
Thanks, Christine.
Thank you.